Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you enjoy the panel sessions that you joined over the past few hours and that you're having an amazing time in this digital summit. We're coming to an end, which is very sad because I'm very much enjoying this conversation, but we're going to come to an end very strong, which is why we're very proud to present the man that speeches about digital advertising all over the world. He wrote 5 best-selling books on advertising and created a blog, The Ad Contrarian. Please welcome on stage Bob Hoffman. Hello, Mr. Hoffman. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well as well. Look, I wanted to, before I give you the floor and I listen to your speech, which I'm looking forward to, I wanted to ask you, what is your next book about?
Oh, my next book is about advertising again. And I'm trying to come to some realization about what advertising is really about and to cut away a lot of the baloney that we've been fed for many years about advertising and get down to the nitty-gritty of what it really is all about.
I'm looking forward to read it, but I am also looking forward to listen to your speech today. So I don't want to take more of your time. I give you all Bob Hoffman.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the important topic of privacy and tracking in the online world, particularly as it relates to online advertising. I hope my remarks will be helpful to you. I spent over 40 years in the advertising business. Advertising's traditional job has been to impart information to people. Today, however, certain types of advertising have become equally concerned with extracting information from people. I don't believe it's an exaggeration to say that a good deal of online advertising can be viewed as spyware that only looks like advertising. Many researchers estimate that about 5 display ads out of 10,000 get clicked on. But almost every one of those 10,000 ads is capable of harvesting information about the person the ad is served to. Before I get into the details of why I'm concerned about tracking, let me issue a disclaimer. Like most of you, I'm not a computer scientist or a software engineer. Trying to understand the arcane technology of digital advertising is above my pay grade. But you don't have to be an automotive engineer to understand that a truck can run you over. About 10 years ago, advertisers had a glorious vision for the future of our industry. Because of digital technology, we had amazing new tools and amazing new media that we never had before. Our ability to use software to track people around the web and reach each individual with personalized advertising was sure to make advertising more relevant, more timely, and more likable. Our ability to listen to consumer conversations through social media and react quickly couldn't help but connect brands more closely with their customers. And the opportunity for people to interact with media was certain to make online advertising more engaging. And yet, by the near unanimous opinion of people inside the advertising business and inside the marketing business, the past decade has been a startling misadventure for the ad industry. Advertising has gotten worse, not better. It has gotten less effective, not more. The ad industry is trusted less than ever. Rather than creating advertising that's more relevant, more timely, and more likable, we're creating advertising that's more annoying, more disliked, and more avoided. One study showed that of all forms of advertising, the 8 types most disliked by consumers were all forms of online advertising. A headline in the New York Times recently asserted, quote, "The advertising industry has a problem. People hate ads," unquote. Another recent report showed that of 24 different industries studied, advertising people were the least trusted. Our industry has been in the middle of dozens of scandals. These scandals involved ad fraud, social media fraud, influencer fraud, click fraud, traffic fraud, brand safety issues, and enormous data breaches and frightening abuse of personal data. I believe every one of these problems, to some degree, can be traced to the practice of spying on people online and collecting information about them without their knowledge and without their informed consent. One of the terrible consequences of this is that it has served to undermine people's confidence in the integrity of democratic institutions and even elections. In 2017, I wrote a book entitled Bad Men: How Advertising Went from a Minor Annoyance to a Major Menace. In that book, I wrote that we know the dangers that accrue when governments know everything about us, follow us everywhere, read our communications, and know who we talk to and what we talk about. We know that because history has shown us the horrors of governmental organizations like the Stasi, the KGB, and the Gestapo. But we don't know what can occur when marketers know everything about us, when they follow us everywhere, read our communications, and know who we talk to and what we talk about. I wrote that 4 years ago. Sadly, today, we are starting to understand what those dangers are. There's nothing ambiguous about the role the marketing and advertising industry has played in the radicalization of politics here in the United States and the violent events of recent months in Washington, D.C. There is a clear line connecting online tracking by advertisers and political radicalization and destabilization. Let me explain. As we move about the web, trackers relentlessly gather information about where we go, what we look at, and what we interact with. This information is then fed into algorithms, which are formulas that are derived from our behavior and to some extent describe our personality. The algorithms are used by platforms. I'm going to use Facebook here as an example to decide what to show us. My Facebook page is completely different from yours. It's based on the algorithms that describe me. My page shows me content and ads that are likely to be more engaging to me. Your page shows you content that is likely to be more engaging to you. The purpose of these algorithms is primarily to keep us inside the corral of the publisher or the platform. The more time I spend in their corral, the more money the platform can realize from selling space on my page to advertisers. To do this, the platforms feed me ever more engaging content. Experience has taught the algorithms that the more juicy the material, the more likely they are to keep me in the corral. Consequently, the algorithms often feed me incrementally more lurid notions of my own predispositions and drive me deeper into rabbit holes where I may encounter people whose ideas are more extreme versions of my own. In May of last year, the Wall Street Journal reported that after the presidential election of 2016, a team of Facebook executives undertook an internal study to understand how these practices shaped the behavior of its users. The study concluded that algorithms they use to gain user attention and increase time on their platform were driving people apart. According to the report, quote, 64% of all extremist group joins are due to our recommendation tools. Our recommendation systems grow the problem, unquote. Facebook would like us to believe that it's simply a bulletin board where people are free to post their opinions and that this is healthy for society. This report revealed the truth. It unambiguously described the way Facebook has directed people into extremist groups of all stripes, and it's all driven by algorithms which are derived from tracking. Surveillance marketing is little more than 10 years old, but it has already helped drive a wedge of intolerance into democratic societies. But there's more to this story. For years, the advertising and marketing industries have been hiding behind the skirts of Facebook and other online platforms. While these companies have taken the heat, it has been largely unrecognized by the public and by policymakers that it's for the sole benefit of advertising and marketers that advertising and others do this squalid work. Facebook derives almost 99% of its revenue from advertising. We are the hidden hand that guides and finances these dangerous practices. And how does the advertising industry justify the damage we're doing? It's through a series of disingenuous assertions about the supposed benefits of surveillance. The first and most dishonest of the claims is that the free internet is reliant on surveillance for its revenue model. This is simply not true. Traditional media, TV, radio, press, outdoor, did very well for decades without surveillance. There is no reason online advertising can't be viable without spying on us. The internet has many things that we all love. It's true that advertising funds much of this free stuff, but tracking and surveillance do not. Is the free internet reliant on advertising? Yes. Is it reliant on tracking? No. Next, we hear that tracking is necessary because consumers want more relevant advertising. This is nonsense. Several months ago, Apple changed its operating system to give its iPhone and iPad users the choice of being tracked or not. Initial reports said that 93% of people here in the US chose not to be tracked. Only 7% voted for, quote, more relevant advertising. You might find it amusing that marketers claim that tracking provides such relevant advertising when data shows that you have to run 10,000 ads to get 5 people to click. Online advertising is also riddled with fraud. The World Federation of Advertisers has estimated that by 2025, ad fraud may be the second largest source of criminal income in the world after drug trafficking. Professor Roberto Cavazos of the University of Baltimore is an economist who has studied fraud in business for over 30 years. After participating in a study of ad fraud, Professor Cavazos stated, quote, I have studied the economic costs of fraud in many sectors for decades, and I was left stunned by the scale of fraud in online advertising, unquote. The key point here is that once again, ad fraud is closely related to tracking. According to researchers, the vast majority of ad fraud occurs in what is called programmatic advertising, a type of advertising that is based largely on the data that is collected by tracking. It costs marketers tens of billions of dollars annually. Some online media platforms and publishers claim that eliminating tracking will harm their businesses and in turn harm the businesses that advertise with them. This is a very similar argument they made when GDPR was being debated 4 or 5 years ago. As far as I can tell, the online ad industry has been more profitable than ever in the past 5 years, despite their sky is falling narrative during the debate over GDPR. But let's play devil's advocate for a moment and pretend that all this talk about marketers' need for spying on the public is essential to their business. The question I would pose is this: since when did the convenience of marketers become more important than the privacy rights of individuals and the integrity of democratic institutions? Online advertising supports many good things that we all enjoy and appreciate. It gives us free entertainment and free information. It allows us to befriend people we would otherwise never meet. It would take so little for the online ad industry to do so much good for itself and for the public. Ending tracking, ending surveillance, ending spying on the public is not a panacea for all the problems of the digital world, but it's a great place to start. It is true that revenue to publishers from advertising is essential to keeping the web free, but surveillance is not. We need to get rid of tracking, not advertising, to help make the web what it ought to be. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I was wondering, because you were mentioning the many ways in which we can address this issue. We have seen that the EU, the US, and other countries are putting forward legislation on the matter. Do you think that these pieces of legislation are going into the right direction, or are we still not actually tackling the main issues behind advertising?
The legislation is problematic because, for the most part, it's not being enforced. And legislation that is not enforced is really not much better than no regulation at all. It is true that in Europe and in the United States, there has been legislation introduced which was supposed to be protecting us, but so little of it is being enforced that I'm afraid it hasn't had much of an influence.
In the many years that you have been working on this, what do you think has been the main challenge that you have confronted when addressing these issues? And what do you think is missing in the public debate to make sure that those legislations that we were talking about are actually properly enforced? Do we need more media and digital literacy so that people are more aware of the many ways in which they are affected? Do we need to engage more often with our policymakers to make sure that they are aware of these challenges? What do you think we should be doing to tackle those issues that we were talking about before?
I think that to a large extent the public doesn't really understand how deeply their private lives are being penetrated by marketers, and as a result of that they don't really understand how dangerous the issue is. I think that legislators and regulators to some extent are starting to understand this and are starting to realize how dangerous it is. But there's still a way to go. The large ad tech companies are fighting this very hard. They don't want, they want to continue what they're doing. They're making a whole lot of money, and they want to continue making a whole lot of money, and they will do whatever they can to protect this. But it's far too dangerous to allow it to continue, in my opinion, and we need to get very serious about these issues.
I am sure that the work that you do and events like this one are going to raise awareness among the population on these issues, and we can put pressure on lawmakers to make sure that they are actually tackled. Thank you so much for being here today with us and for your very insightful presentation that I'm sure is going to be food for thought for the many people who are following today. Thank you so much, Bob Hoffman, everybody.
Thank you.